Hello, welcome. This is a Freethought Forum by the Atheists of Society of Knoxville, the Rationalists of East Tennessee. And we are going to talk today about Goodwill.
And I'm John Clark. We want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you are not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural beliefs.
Okay, and we'll talk about Goodwill and what we mean by that. And we're not trying to make a plug for the Goodwill industry, but on getting along with people even when we differ with each other. We'll talk at length on this. So go ahead.
But first, we want to tell you a little bit about the sponsors of our show. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's in the Old City, starting around 5:30. Look for a silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And as Matt Dillahunty at the Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
Okay, and the Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings that you are welcome to attend. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures or presentations with then a lively discussion around about analysis and participation. The second Sunday is a book club discussion, and you don't have to have read the book, but come for the discussion if you haven't. And then there's reflection meetings. And the reflection meetings are with potluck meals, and that's always a good time. The last time we had a discussion like that was exceedingly interesting. It was on who our favorite teacher was. One of the things we discussed, and it was very interesting.
Later in the show, we'll give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations, and also phone numbers. But now we'll head to our news segment. I've got a couple pieces. Did you have anything to...
No, you go right ahead.
All right. Well, so oftentimes our movement targets church-state issues, and we will, for example, American Atheists will target a cross at the World Trade Center Museum, or well, whatever the building is that was erected for preserving the area. But anyhow, and saying that having the cross there, saying that it was, for all the Christians that died, but throwing government money into it and trying to get some sort of endorsement by the state. That's an example of something I don't necessarily agree with, but it's an example of what we attempt to do. Another one is anytime someone's being forced to pray at a council meeting, maybe a city meeting or something, or some sort of religious document like the Ten Commandments being put on a courthouse. And so the idea is to separate the two and identify people that might be getting privilege, typically in this country, be Christians. So there's a big backlash against that. People don't like secularists or even other Christians that fight these sorts of things. However, now we have a case where the Ask a Muslim people have erected a billboard which states that Jesus is Muslim. I don't have an image of it today, but it's the literal quote is Jesus is Muslim, and then in parentheses it says present tense intended, or something along those lines. And that's their belief, and it's on a billboard. And so the backlash didn't go to the Muslims for putting it up. It went to the atheists because atheists weren't protesting it. Well, it's a billboard, and it's private property.
If they paid for it,
it's free speech.
Yeah.
And while I don't agree with everything that some groups do, well, in Islam, but I was going to say American Atheists because I don't agree particularly with this World Trade Center thing that they're upset about. But at least it has something to do with the state, and the state's not involved in this. We don't protest free speech. We protest when someone jumps in and gets in the way of free speech. And they have every right to put that up, whether or not I believe what they say or not. And I would extend that to the late not great Fred Phelps, who from Westboro Baptist Church, got his free speech. It was very annoying and difficult to deal with, but we preserved it.
That's his free speech.
I didn't really have anything else of note. But,
well, let's see. The Atheist Society of Knoxville, it's called ASK, meets 2 times a week, and they have evening meetups and fun, drink, and conversation. And it's for conversation and just enjoyment together.
Right.
Good outreach for people.
Oh, I think that's the mid program there.
Okay, well, we're ready to move into
yeah, we can go straight into it.
Okay.
So,
Goodwill
is mainly what we want to concentrate on today, and I guess we were going to go kind of chronological with it.
Well,
how did it come
what
about?
we were talking about is we want to distinguish between different viewpoints on the one hand and the person. In other words, you and I will eventually on some things disagree. I mean, that's inevitable. But to attack a viewpoint is different from attacking a person.
Right.
In fact, when you go to professional meetings, you present papers in the hope that someone will attack it. Now, why? Why would you guess?
Well, so I don't want, I mean, when I present an idea, I'm going to present it and give my evidence for it. And if I'm wrong, then I want to know about it.
Yeah. I had a typist friend of mine who typed up my articles and things. And I said, now, if what I'm saying doesn't seem to make sense to you, just put in brackets, this doesn't make sense. Or she said, well, you're the professor. I said, that's precisely why I need your help. You see, I don't want to get up and make a fool of myself. In other words, criticism of somebody's viewpoint is not an insult.
Right.
It's a help. And if we can make that distinction. So if you criticize my view, that's a compliment. For one thing, you paid attention enough to criticize it.
And we have common ground. We're trying to learn something, or at least share it, for that matter. Yeah. And that would be a point where if we disagree, maybe we don't have the same evidence, so we share it. Yeah. Maybe we can at least say, I look at it this way: the worst case scenario, we walk away. I understand you, you understand me. We still disagree, and that's.
And we might learn from each other.
I believe that was a song somewhere in there, but. Anyways, yeah.
But and often, there's one person real dear to me that I've differed with a lot, and that's myself. I mean, I'm 82, so I obviously had changed my mind on several things over the years. In fact, recently, I thought I really had a good insight. And then last week, I was reading a book, and it really upset me, you see, because there went my good insight. Oh. But I was glad I read the book.
Right.
Because now, if I work harder, I might be able to come up with a better insight, if I'm lucky. But that book actually helped me then to develop.
Right. I can't say I've quite had that same experience, but I do remember when I got out of the military and I moved again. I moved all my stuff out of storage from the parents' place, right? Finally got it out. And I had all these school books. And so I'm going to school again because I'm doing pre-nursing, and I end up writing about something I had written about before. And I couldn't remember anything, and I was like, maybe I have that. So I go through all the stuff, and I find it. I look back and I read it, and I'm like, that isn't a sound thesis statement. And then I start reading through, and I'm just like, this is useless. I can't use this at all. It's complete waste of my time.
The guy who wrote Jurassic Park once said, I think this is a pretty close quote. He says, I'm not a good writer, but I'm a great rewriter.
Yeah.
And what he meant is when he reads his first draft, he sees a lot of flaws and ways to improve it. And I'm going through now rewriting one novel I started 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm still reworking it.
It's really interesting, but yeah, you have to kind of test yourself and
test yourself. That's good. Yeah.
Another story here. Early when I was a musician at once, and I was playing the saxophone. I'm in middle school, and I'm doing a test for, whatever. I think it was sight reading or something, right? And so I'm playing it for the instructor. Well, I would stop and then go, like in the middle of the test, go back and fix it and just keep playing. And at the end, he's like, I would correct you, but you went back and fixed everything you messed up. Maybe you should just make the error, and then it's clear that you can see it, but you just run through it one time without stopping, right? I did not get really good at that until I was in the military, and that military mindset was just, if you make a mistake, you better make it as loud as you can, so that you're so embarrassed by it that you'll go fix it. Which is it's a good system there, but unfortunately it also brings about this confidence when you present ideas. And so that would be at a scientific conference, they would say an idea with extreme confidence but no evidence.
Yeah.
And I see this happening in other places, which we may talk about in a moment, but it really conflicted because there was no correction there when it came to that.
Sometimes a correction is not that you don't have enough evidence, and that's a big debate as to how much evidence counts as enough evidence.
Right.
But just a plain contradiction. Often you'll have a theory that you develop, and it develops in this way, and develops in this way, and this way, and then you look at it and you see, well, those directions don't always fit. And most of our mistakes seem to be. And I've given this example on this program before, but I think it'll work, is all of us out there in our audience, they know exactly what we're talking about because they drive cars. And when you drive a car, you advance this little conjecture, I think I can get through this intersection. Here comes another car. Revision takes place instantly, and you don't feel like that's a threat. You say, that saved my life. And so what we're suggesting is goodwill and criticism of our views go together.
Yeah, and I think exactly what you pulled out with the car analogy there. This is the predator in the bushes, and I'm simulating what's going to happen if I don't act based on that information. And I mean, that seems to me like where this whole ability to discern, I'm not going to say right from wrong, but at least to get an idea of what's good for us and bad for us.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned right and wrong, because what we're calling now is just ordinary common sense reasoning.
Right.
And ethics go together. Now, let me suggest this. This may sound, since this is a group of mostly naturalists rather than supernaturalists, but one of my favorite persons in this world was a fundamentalist Christian woman. Now, she and I differed on some basic points, obviously, but she had enormous common sense in everyday life. And the preachers recognized it, and other people who weren't preachers who worked with her recognized it. In fact, I think I mentioned this once, there were 5 preachers who wanted to speak at her funeral. Because she had helped them with she would say something like this to the preacher. If a preacher was saying, now the Lord told me, and it kept, she would say, now, good brother, maybe you told yourself that. Things like that, you see. And they appreciated her because they got carried away with themselves, and she brought the ego back to earth for them. And my major regret in life, I think my major regret, or one of them, is that when her husband died, and she is older than I, and was a relative, we didn't invite her to come and live with us in Texas, because she did live with her children, but I think she would have come, and it just didn't dawn on me that she would move 1,000 miles to leave these beautiful hills and live in Texas. But looking back, I think she might have come to live with us, and certainly would have been good for our kids when we were raising them, because this is a woman of incredible common sense and goodwill. And what we're trying to say here is people are going to differ in religion, in their metaphysics, and a lot of things, but they can have common goodwill and common morals and common values.
Right.
And that's what makes a decent, good society.
I'll go as far, I'll extend that to other forms of life, or certain animal groups. I mean, they possess some reasoning ability, or some ability to detect what's good for themselves and others. Well, and ours must be vastly more complicated, but its roots appear...
Well, they have feelings, and Bentham, the old philosopher in the 19th century, said, do animals have feelings? And that's a good point. And of course, all of us who've had dogs
that's what we're fighting, is our own feelings a lot of the time. We were talking about passion the other day, and passion really, it's a great tool for motivation, but it can get it away of your reasoning.
Yeah, what's interesting about passion is we're not fighting against passion. We're trying to say that one passion can overwhelm another passion.
Right.
I mean, I'm passionate about reason.
Yeah.
You see? Yeah. But there are other passions, you see.
I'll take this moment to take a stab at David Silverman. He's passionate about reason.
Yeah.
He gets on there and he pokes at certain things that, dude, maybe he thinks jive with everyone.
Yeah, we have a caller coming.
Yeah, let's take us a call here.
Yeah. Go ahead, please. Give us a name. And
oh, we got him. Caller, are you there with us?
Yeah.
Now go ahead and talk to us.
Yeah, my name's Jerry. How y'all doing today?
Hey, Jerry.
Fine, thank you. Go.
I just want to make a comment on your show today.
Sure.
I tend to believe, I watch a show for the past every Tuesday, or almost every Tuesday for the past couple months. And I just want to comment that, pretty much everything you hear from you guys and everything you hear from the religious portion of the sector, it's all bullshit. You guys are all full of shit.
Well, Jerry, if you don't mind,
wait, let him finish. Go ahead.
I was going to caution the words because
everybody's full of shit.
Jerry,
go ahead. Try to control your language, would you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Could you make your point another way?
Yeah. I'll make it. Well, I'm sorry. I'll make it another way.
Yeah.
Because we do appreciate the input.
Go ahead. And what view of it? What view did you disagree with?
Actually, to be honest with you, I can't put it another way because every side is full of shit. You all think you know something, but you don't know anything.
Could you give us an example, Jerry?
I guess he couldn't. No, it's okay. I guess he.
I want to apologize to the viewers. We try to screen these calls as best we can. It would have been great had Jerry given us an example. And Jerry,
we couldn't disagree with his view because he didn't have a view.
Yeah.
That's the only problem.
Well, he had one. He just didn't tell us what it was.
What it was. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's too bad.
Maybe if he can articulate it,
Well, let's talk about what reason is. It's not some abstract thing. It's just ordinary consistency that begins at least with language. Mm-hmm. If I say, well, Henry, have an apple, and I hand you a coconut, well, you can see
right.
I'm just not using the language consistently.
And if the language didn't have a word for coconut, there would be some other, I don't know, round object that's edible, and I would insert that word, and we would carry on the conversation.
So
let's take it.
Okay. Now we got another caller. Go ahead. Go ahead, Al, or whoever's calling in.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Good and loud, would you?
The guy who just spoke, who just talked to you on the phone?
Yeah, Jerry.
Yeah, go ahead.
What he said was right. He said it in the wrong way, but what he said was right.
Okay, you got a point.
You guys are empty-headed. You have no knowledge. Let me give you an example, all right?
Yeah, an example. Yeah,
good
You're
example.
scientists, right?
Go ahead. I'm not a scientist. Go ahead.
Okay. How old is the Earth?
Who are you asking?
Not you, Joe, the other guy.
Well, neither one of us is omniscient. Go ahead and tell us what the answers is. I don't know that. I didn't know the question. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, sure you do.
Well,
John,
hang on.
John to answer. Who's the other guy? That was a
if you don't mind.
picture.
Okay. So I'd reckon the Earth's somewhere around 5 billion years old, that's not. I mean, I'll just throw that. I'm fine with that, but I don't know how old it is.
Well,
for sure.
What's the name of the other guy?
Who? Me? John?
No, the other guy.
Oh, Joe.
Joe.
Oh, Joe and John.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Joe was a Baptist at one time. Right?
Right.
Okay, so you're saying maybe 5 billion. Let's bring it down to, let's say, 1 billion years old.
Why?
Go ahead. You're making a point.
Oh,
Well, because you won't be able to deal with the 5 billion when I get done with you.
Well, go ahead. That's there.
Let's say it was.
You're making a good point. Go ahead.
Well, let's say it's only 1 million years old. All right.
Okay.
If it was 1 million years old on the Earth, the population would be 10 plus 27,000 zeros. No matter how you figure it out, that's what it would come out to.
Why?
10 plus 27,000 zeros.
Well, I'm asking you a question now. Why?
Because that's how you figure out birth
Al,
per rate.
Al, I'm going to have to stop you.
Live,
Al,
one person dies.
Al, you
Figure it out
just said
yourself.
that we
The
didn't know
wars and
anything.
everything.
Okay. I got you.
You can't disprove that.
Okay. Now, you're building in that people died, right?
No, 2 people are born, 1 person dies.
Okay. Now, you're not an evolutionist, right?
I'm a fundamentalist.
Okay. Now, most fundamentalists I know, almost all, are not evolutionists. So you think probably, but don't let me put words in your mouth, because that's not fair.
No, go ahead, because what you're going to say is what I'm saying.
Well, no,
is
you're going
not
to put.
true.
Are you going to put
words in your mouth?
Are you going to put words in my mouth?
I'd like to take him up on one of his
Well, I
offers.
want to hear his view.
Wait, I ain't done with you yet.
Now, my question was, when do you think the human race began?
I know when it began.
Well, let me hear.
4004 BC.
Okay, so I can see where your logic comes from. If it's that short a period of time, now, of course, did you build into your theory the Black Plague?
Yes.
Okay.
And the deaths, and all the plagues that took place, and all the wars that took place.
Mm-hmm. So you think that the human race would have been overly populated?
You couldn't fill the earth with the amount of people.
If they did not die, you're right.
I'm saying if the world was 50 billion years old, I'm bringing it down to 1 million just to make you guys look good.
Okay, I don't think I don't think the human race has been here this long, but you may.
Yeah.
No, that's where you and I differ.
I mean, we could say it's 1 trillion years old if you want, but I'm bringing it down to 1 million because you think it might be that old.
No,
if
I don't think. No.
There wouldn't be enough people. There would be too many people on the planet Earth. It wouldn't hold that many people.
Well,
it's impossible.
I think you're right. If the human race has been here 1 million years, then we're in a big problem.
We have a big problem.
Well, that's my point, too.
I would still disagree, to be honest, but...
you can't disagree because you got nothing to disagree about.
Al, you don't ever let me talk, and you don't ever...
I don't want you to talk. I want the elder man to talk because I'm an elder man.
You need...
I don't want to talk to a boy.
Okay, I think you want me to talk because you think I'll be more in agreement with you, right?
Yeah.
No, that ain't why. Okay, little boy. Let me talk to you, John. Okay.
If you're going to
about helium-4.
Hold on,
You know
Al.
how much helium-4 meteorite dust falls on the Earth every year?
No, I don't.
You don't?
Well, okay, Al.
Well,
wait a minute.
come on.
His point is this, and I'm going to grant you this point. You and I both have one thing in common, Al.
This is science now.
Well, I think you and I will agree. You and I have both an enormous amount of ignorance. Would you agree?
No.
Okay, well then I think I'm more humble than you.
You can be as humble as you want, but you're still wrong.
Okay. Well, what's your next point, by the way?
The helium that falls on the Earth every year, 15 million tons of nickel meteorite dust fall on the Earth every single year.
Yeah.
You should know that. You're a scientist.
No, he already told you he's not.
No. First of all, I'm not a scientist. Secondly,
Well, let John answer the question, all right? He's supposed to be smart.
no, here's the answer, what I'm trying to tell you.
Don't tell me his answer. Let him say it.
Well, will you listen? Or is this possible?
Okay.
Okay. To be a scientist doesn't mean you know everything, okay? To be a minister doesn't mean you know everything.
You know everything that God says is true.
Well, now, God probably, on your view, would have said a lot more than what you know.
Well, I sure would.
Okay, then you don't know everything God said.
No, I'm not going to say everything because I don't want to look super smart in front of you two guys.
Well, of course not. You don't want to do that in front
I don't
of
think
yourself.
I don't think you're in danger of doing that anytime soon.
Okay, listen.
Go ahead.
If the Earth was 5 million years old, there'd be 200 feet of meteorite dust on the Earth. 200 feet.
You know what, Al?
I can figure that out with a calculator.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this.
You should get published.
Can you publish that in an article?
Oh, no, I can go to carbon 14 and carbon 12 if you want to.
Good, go right ahead.
So we can date the rocks and date the wood.
Well, could you publish this in an article so that we could read it very clearly?
Yeah.
Okay, send it to us.
No problem.
Yeah,
send it to us.
The only problem I have is I can't do it.
Oh, okay.
But you just said you could do it.
Well, okay. I've said things in contradiction of myself. And
No, it's not a contradiction. I can do it, but I can't do it.
Oh, okay.
I love this dance.
Okay, what's your
You
next?
want to know why?
I give up.
Okay, it's because I had brain surgery and I can't do it.
Oh, okay.
But someone else can, and you have that information. I mean, why don't you give it to us?
I'm the only one in the home every day, 24 hours a day.
Okay.
I think.
Have you got another point to make?
Yeah.
What?
No, have you got another point?
Oh, the other point to make?
Yeah.
No, I want you to tell me about the first two, about the population, which is impossible if the Earth was 1 million years old, like you say, or 5 million, or 50 million. It's impossible.
Let us address this. Let us at least address this.
Meteorite dust, we'd be kicking up. We'd be walking around
you can't
in 200 feet of meteorite dust.
Okay, here's what I'm trying to say. What we need to do, and this makes
You can't disprove that.
You haven't let us try.
You can't. You can't.
Would you shut up and let me try?
Okay. That's enough.
You want to do our mid-program break here in a second?
Yeah, and if we had what you always need in situations like this, or any situation like this, you need to have information spelled out in great detail so you can look at it.
Right.
And if you're wrong, then you can say, okay, I'm wrong. I mean, that's no big deal.
I think some viewers at home might be sort of on the edge of their seat wondering, where could we actually find this information out? And so I would suggest that you just Google and then find you a nice, good .edu site somewhere. But
here's what a scientist will do.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. When they make a statement like this, then they put in a footnote where they did the research, where they got the information, so you can look up in the footnotes to check out to see what they're talking about.
Right.
Does in fact hold.
Yeah.
It's like when a preacher quotes the Bible, he may think to give the verse in Scripture so that people can test to see if he's just quoting his own brain instead of what's in the Bible. So the same here. You need to give the footnotes and where he got the material, and so people can look at it. And then he needs to draw clearly what he's really saying. That is he saying that the human race has been here, that we think the human race has been here billions of years or millions of years? That's not what we're saying. That's what he's saying we're saying, but that's a different thing.
And of course, he has a whole different idea of creation and whatnot.
Yeah,
and I do think, to an extent, I think we owe a slight rebuttal to it. And I would just say that we think humans, as we are now, as close to as we are now, have been around for 100, maybe 200,000 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Hominids, which if we take it a step back further, we can go several million. But
that's not human beings.
Yeah, that's not human beings. We probably could not breed with them and produce offspring.
Okay.
Language. I mean, heck, we know at least 12,000, but probably 50, 40,000 years ago. I don't. That one's really hard to know.
That's how you're going to define being a person is language. It seems to me.
But
so that's one way to think.
He said something this is what should strike everyone at home immediately when you think about it a little bit more detail. 2 people. So he's talking about Adam and Eve. There was never a first human. There was never a first mouse. Life doesn't work that way. And I can't crunch that into several minutes. As best try as I might, I can't.
Why don't we do the
populations evolve.
The evolution thing later, because
we'll do
we got another topic.
But let's do the mid-program break.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. You got the mid-program. I don't think we have a good one.
We'll run our info, though.
Let's get on with our topic here. One is the...
No, Joe, I mean, run our info program break.
Well, go ahead. You got one?
Yeah. You can go ahead and start it up.
If you live around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
Various theologians of the Middle Ages raised the interesting question of whether right and wrong are whatever God decrees them to be. For example, if God had commanded, "Thou shalt rape thrice daily," would it have been morally right to carry out the command and wrong to disobey it? If divine decree is not only the source, but the ultimate criterion of right and wrong, is there any basis for trusting the supreme being who concocts the meaning of right and wrong? Indeed, were this putative being to trick his creatures by scrambling the consequences of commands and prohibitions, it would be irrational to call him evil. If he should lie, deceive, order Joshua to slaughter the Canaanites... I think I... Yeah, I missed up. Hang on, let me start.
Would God order... he claims in the Bible that... there is a claim that he ordered the slaughter of Canaanites.
Right.
Now, my question is, among the Canaanites, were there any pregnant women?
Right.
And if so, then he commanded abortion. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm trying to say is, you just take an argument and then see where it goes. This is what our caller was trying to do with us.
It was, yeah.
Take an argument, and that's fair enough, you see. And then if the facts are right, then you see, well, where does this go? And that's what rational thinking is. And now, one of our things we're trying to raise is, if God had commanded, "Thou shalt rape 3 times a day," would that be right? Now, most Jews and Christians I know who are theists would say, well, God wouldn't do that.
Right, God wouldn't do that. Yeah.
Well, the reason they say this, and it makes sense, is they believe God is good. Now, what that means is that if there's a God, he's got to have moral standards, you see. And if he doesn't live by the moral standards, then he's not God. See, that's the logic of the argument.
And some of that common sense is creeping in there from the lady you were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And common sense often means common consensus of people who, trying to get along with each other, they come up with common consensus about what's right and wrong. And where this comes from, if people want to live together peacefully and productively, then they have to have certain moral standards, one of which is, "Thou shalt not steal," you see. Now, that was a commandment among people long before Moses.
One of the reasonable commandments. I mean, really.
And the reason for that is very simple. Dogs understand it because dogs cannot survive as a pack if they start stealing from each other. They waste their lives because they need to hunt and get more food, but if they steal from each other, the pack is going to die. So dog packs know that you can't.
And that's an animal, taken aback, has been around for so long, and this stayed with it, this idea.
Yeah.
Very early idea.
And if a wolf pack or a group of dogs or other animals in a group like that killed off each other of the same kind, then the kind would not survive. And I think this is what the commandment against that human beings invented, thou shalt not kill, long before Moses, is that's necessary for keeping the community going.
Right.
And in the Bible, for example, Abraham is condemned by Pharaoh in Egypt for lying to him. Now, this is before Moses. Now, which is to say, those Egyptians, long before Moses, knew what lying was about. Why? You couldn't run the Egyptian society without controlling lying. Now, imagine a society in which you just have wholesale lying so that, well, you can't communicate.
Well, in tasks that would revolve around the functioning of the society. Because lying would be something, it's entangled with language.
Exactly.
And you would think that deceit didn't require a language, but then when the language came about, you could mix the two and you have lying. But yeah, trading of goods, the organization of a law, lying would totally disrupt that, whereas perhaps procreating and some other things, lying might get you around some areas, but...
Well, you could procreate, but once you procreate, you have to keep the kids alive.
Right.
And that means you have to cooperate.
So even that would have quite. I mean, there's a lot to, and that. Yeah. There you have this relationship that builds up that throughout. Very common amongst humans, but
bearing false witness. You can't have a society unless you control that.
Right.
And honor your. There's a passage in Deuteronomy 5. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the earth. Now, that doesn't mean if you don't obey your parents, although there is a passage in the Bible, just kill them off. But I think the logic and the sensibleness behind this is honor your father and mother, that your days may be long upon the earth, means if you don't have enough sense to learn from your parents, you're not going to live long.
Right. Most of their ideas got them to the age they're at.
From their parents.
And
most parents know. A mother will say to her kid, pay attention to this, honey, because if you don't...
The stove is hot. You know, that gun is loaded.
Yeah.
These are things that you should listen to your parents.
Yeah.
A good idea.
These commandments then make their good logical sense. And Moses didn't get them off of a mountain. They came more from mothers teaching their kids and from men trying to relate to each other.
Now let's transition a little bit because we're going to hear people say that we're getting into moral relativism at some point. They're going to say this as a means
to the contrary. We're giving them the facts
now
as why there's a social and physical objective root to ethics.
And this it changed over time, slowly, but a lot of it stayed the same. Well, stealing is one of them.
Let's take an example of relativism.
Yeah, let's do that.
Is monogamy the moral rule or polygamy?
Right.
Well, you have both in the Bible, don't you? You have Abraham, who is often called the father of faith, and in the book of Galatians and Romans, Romans regards him as the basic father of faith.
And the Abrahamic religions.
Three religions out of. Now, Abraham had at least two wives. Now, polygamy, Jacob, more than one wife. Now, was that wrong or right? You see? Now, the Mormons, no longer in this country, except maybe in northern Arizona.
Some little places,
cannot practice and be good Mormons. Now, they can be fundamentalist Mormons, but they're mostly northern Arizona. They cannot practice their polygamy. However, Joseph Smith, their founder, had 53 wives, he claims.
Exactly.
And Brigham Young, of course, practiced moderation. He had only 25. And I remember as a kid when I heard this, I wondered, how would you kiss your 53 wives goodnight? Well, you'd have a sponge, I guess. I don't know. But my point is that at the time of the patriarchs in the Bible, they considered multiple wives to be moral. Today we don't. What I admire about the Old Testament in particular is they tell the story of those polygamous marriages and let you see, using common sense, that there are some disadvantages.
They tell you all the details.
Yeah.
Like, well, they tell you details that, you know, a lot of people wouldn't tell you, at least in the culture we live in today. They certainly wouldn't have laid it out like maybe in a few people's like biographies and whatnot. But
there's a novel called The Red Tent, which tries to get inside one of those biblical stories from a woman's point of view to see what it's like, and it's a very insightful novel, it seems to me. And
well,
so relativism. Often people are saying, well, if you're an atheist, you're a relativist. If you're a liberal, you're I think that's bearing false witness. That's not what relativism is saying. Well, what's good for you is good for you, and what's good for me is good for me, and that's called individual relativism. Well, of course, you can't have ethics that way.
Got some interesting libertarians out there that
and it's interesting that
conflate that. I think
the right wing and religion, libertarianism get together. That's an interesting combination, isn't it?
Yeah.
But let's talk about one libertarian called Ayn Rand, who wrote a book called The Virtue of Selfishness. Now, she's an atheist. Now, I want to say that I think here's an atheist on this point. She's just dead wrong.
Right.
See?
Right.
Now, why? Because she cannot distinguish between elementary selfishness and self-interest. Most of us understand self-interest and don't think it's wrong. We do think selfishness is wrong.
Or
what's the difference?
Yeah.
Well, the major difference is self-interest my self-interest includes the interest of other people. To care for myself means I'm going to have to care for other people because that's to my self-interest. And I think Rand's book just simply misses the boat on this.
Well, I think a lot of people, it's a confusing issue to a degree. Am I doing it just for me? A criticism that I hear directed maybe our way would be something along the line of, well, if we're going to go that route, well, eugenics is okay, and all this, and they start building on all these ideas because we're just going to do what's best for everyone, and you're not allowed to just sit there and take a person's point of view and grab whatever variables you want, throw it in, and then output a terrible idea. I mean, it's a straw man type argument, and well, anyways, I do think that type of confusion exists for a reason because people don't make this distinction very well. I guess that was my main point. But
and now the opposite is often said to be altruism. That is, somebody does something good and expects nothing in return. And I'm hesitant about that because I think I would rather someone helping me if they get pleasure in doing it.
Right.
You see what I mean? In fact, if they help me and I get something from it and they get pleasure, then we both have profited.
And I think if you look back, the evidence speaks to that because we're doing what's good for all of us. And maybe an ultimate goal would be some altruistic. I mean, if you want to set that as a goal for yourself to become this altruistic person,
unselfish.
But I just don't know that makes sense. It certainly doesn't make sense historically. It doesn't make sense with the evolution of any species I'm aware of. It seems a little odd.
Yeah, it does.
And but I guess I could put it in my mind and imagine it as a goal to strive for.
Okay, suppose someone said
maybe
friend, I'd like to have lunch with you because I know how much it means to you. Of course, I get nothing from it myself, but I want to have lunch with you because it means so much to you. Well, you might say thanks for nothing because part of having lunch is not just to satisfy your hunger, as you want to relate to another person.
Well, and that's the part where I don't think you'll get away from, is because the benefit is going to, it's going to be symbiotic and mutualistic. It's probably not going to be parasitic, even if you intend it to be. You might accidentally benefit them somehow. And
the gentleman who called in, not this time, but the time before last, he said his name was Michael. Oh. Now, he and I differed a lot, but he said to me something that was interesting. We didn't have time to develop it, but I got the impression, well, here was a sensible man, and if I had lunch with him, I think he and I could profit. He wouldn't say, Joe, you're an idiot, or you're an ignoramus. No. And I wouldn't say that to him. I'd say, well, we differ. Let's see where and why, and let's see how far we...
I thought the same thing watching the show. And whereas it is slightly different from the other call. The two calls we've received today, these are people who, both of them really couldn't handle the conversation over the phone, but in person, I would have trouble imagining how is this conversation going to go down. And
now it's one thing to differ strongly, and that's fair enough. It's another thing to just not hear another person.
Yeah.
Now all of us like to be heard, but I think most of our audience would agree with us. It's a lot more difficult to listen than it is to talk. Listening is, my wife is a counselor, and I see, she listens, and I can see this is hard work.
Yeah.
Because you've got to follow not only what a person says logically, point by point, you've got to also follow, well, this person feels this way about it too. Yeah. And then you got to have a little empathy. You've got to get inside the other person's point of view.
And you have to know when those two things are different maybe too. I'm thinking medically now. I'm thinking SOAP notes, objective, subjective. And I was recently reading about Daniel Dennett had done a study with, I can't remember her name, but they're studying people like Bob Barker who are in the faith and left, or haven't left, but are still non-believers. And when you're talking to someone with that type of, those issues, and you're trying to understand them, I mean, there are going to be objective facts, and there's going to be feelings that you may have zero life experience with, and you have to, you have to, so listening is much harder.
It's very hard.
Much harder.
Well, would you agree that empathy is at the heart of what we call the golden rule?
Yeah.
And that's...
I think that, I think, I want to go back to biology. I'm fascinated with it. The development of empathy. A large brain that can simulate what's going on in someone else or something else. I mean, when you look at your dog, you know if it's upset. A lot of people. You are, in fact, reading their minds. And this empathy is the root. I mean, it's
You're trying to feel with them and think with them,
and it's not 100% accurate.
Right.
That's
I like that, because one of the worst things in marriage is to assume you read your spouse's mind. I mean, that can end up in divorce.
I totally missed that one, didn't I, honey? Yep. Yes, you did. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if everybody had to live alone, would they be sane?
And when they went out to hang out and talk to everybody else, they'd say some really dumb stuff, maybe.
Well, I have a feeling that if persons were totally alone, even Robinson Crusoe had to have somebody else. If you're totally alone, everything you think of you might start believing it, and pretty soon you'd turn into a lunatic.
Yeah.
That's why you need others to say, well, here's what my wife does, and I love it. She's not argumentative, but she says, and the expression on the eyebrows says, are you sure you want to hold to this nutty idea?
It's almost like...
It's a good way. And that way your ego is not crushed.
I just imagined what you said, and it makes no sense to me.
So, and that's helpful.
Yeah.
Say, oh, well, yeah, let me think about that again.
So, more to our topic, and let's gear it towards religion a bit. Religion is this not even an early attempt, but even a later attempt by us as a species to come about a way of living, you know. And so all religions are going to have a great deal in common with each other. And in fact, now we're going to add atheism to this. Not a religion, but people who don't have that's why they don't need morals, because we all have these things in common. And I would like more secular and free-thinking people to respect what religion has done. You don't have to respect the crazy stuff it does now.
Well,
sometimes,
what that means is
respect what it's done.
The reason that makes sense to me is we ought to learn from the anthropologists. They go to another tribe or another culture, and instead of saying, "Let me tell you all how it is," they go to learn from this other culture.
Yeah, you can't just. I'm sorry, you just had an idea throw up my head big time with spears, right? You have these anthropologists I remember learning about how do we deal with spears, and you've got these different types of hominids back with spears, and Neanderthals didn't throw them, we don't think, because early when you looked at a spearhead, you attach it to an arrow, you give it to a kid and see what it does. I don't know what to do with this, you know. But then we realized what spears were actually for. You've got to take all your preconceived notions away. You got to look at the tools they are using and when it comes to Neanderthals, the bodies that they're using and the calories they burn, and figure out what they were able to do with it. And that listening is a lot harder thing to do, because you're trying to listen to these facts and figure out what's going on. And anthropologists, that method. And that's Dan Dennett, again, a philosopher. He talks about looking at religion. How does it work? Why does it work? Where did it come from? And learn from it.
I'm reading this recently, a biblical scholar on the notion of animal sacrifice. And she's getting us, the writer is trying to say, well, when did these people start making animal sacrifices? Okay, now that's one question. The question is, what did it mean to them? What problem, another way of putting it is, what problem were they trying to solve?
Is there a cost benefit to it?
Now, one thing that occurred to me, but see, this is just an occurrence, and I may be dead wrong, is that maybe what they often called sacrifice would be that there's some animals in there that are sick, and so they take them out, because in the Bible you have sacrifice and purity.
Scapegoating.
Connected. So maybe, but I may be wrong, but this is something that could be looked into. That part of the sacrifice process in the Old Testament is taking these animals out of the flock or out of the other herd if they were carrying diseases or if they were sickly. And then they sacrifice them.
And I think,
in other words, they kill them.
Now, biblical references, you could go to Genesis and Adam and Eve being requested to give a sacrifice. What you're asking, you would have to go deeper. You would have to go, before that idea came about, surely there was something else that brought that idea to
one of the theories is if you look at the Greeks and the Hebrews both, one of their theories is you brought sacrifices because you thought, well, maybe if you give the god this sacrifice, you'll get some favors, or at least you'll postpone bad weather. Or you can help your crops. In other words, it was a kind of a gift. Now, you can see this if one troop invades and is about to capture you, or maybe if you can sacrifice one or two.
Well, a herd of animals.
Or a herd of animals, then you can stop the war.
The cheetah and the gazelle. The cheetah does not go after the strong young gazelle. The strong young gazelle can't outrun the sprint, but it has a flight distance, and it gets away every time. It is a waste of time for that cheetah. And so perhaps, that's a great idea, we know humans watch these things. We hunted them. And surely we didn't catch the young one. We caught the one that was hobbling.
Exactly, and the same would be with the cheetah or the wolf. And so sacrifice is built into the animal kingdom. Or remember the story of Jonah in the Bible?
Right.
And they thought there was a storm god.
Yeah.
So what did they do? They were going to throw Jonah. They thought Jonah was making the God angry, so they tossed him.
Yeah, this idea of superstitions, this just starts making me think of, like, knock on wood. I mean, they have a similar root, too. Now, that had an observational root, I think, directly. Looks like we got a call. We are very close to the time.
Okay, let's go.
Hello, caller. This is Freethought Forum. Just to let you know, we've only got a few minutes left in the show.
Go right
Could you
ahead.
give us a nickname, please?
Oh, good and loud. We can't hear you.
Anyway, did you say that Bob Barker was an atheist? John?
Bob Barker. Yeah, I mean, is there a problem you have with that?
Yeah, I'd never heard of that before.
Oh.
But you said that Bob Barker went from... I mean, this is the guy that wants you to neuter your pets and stuff?
Oh, wait, Dan Barker. Sorry, no, Dan Barker. Perhaps you heard... Maybe I did say Bob.
He may be right. I don't know what you said.
No, I see what you mean.
Definitely right. I wouldn't call you if I wasn't definitely right. I was so upset. I thought neuter your pets. Is that,
well, good point.
Is that
good
part
point.
of the atheist agenda or something?
Good point. Let me apologize to anyone at home that heard that. It's Dan Barker.
Okay.
If I misspoke. Oh, man.
But you help indicate our point.
Yeah.
As you did us a nice favor by giving us a good criticism.
Yes.
The other thing I was wanting to ask was to Joe. Joe, did you say if God said it was okay to rape 3 times a day, you could do it?
I said it, and I was quoting a book.
Okay,
yeah.
let me give you my viewpoint here.
Well, is that a yes or no?
Well, no, I did not say God said rape 3 times a day, no.
Did John say 3 times a day?
I was quoting a book, and we actually didn't get to the...
No, the word if was in front of that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So when I heard that, I wanted to call up and ask if you guys are on a special diet.
Good for you.
You know, if we had said that, maybe Jerry and Al would have had a point, but I don't think they did.
Well, no, I'm glad you called in on that because your point is well taken.
Also, I'd like to say that guy that called in before me, I hope he calls next week.
I do too. I hope he does call. I hope he learns to speak.
Why do you want him to call next week?
Well, to hear what his opinion is on the subject that you're going to have next week. So what is the subject that you're going to have next week?
Well, you know, I hate to admit it, but we hadn't thought that far ahead.
I have some suggestions.
Go.
Okay. I think that God, and I think that you should not allow people to be on the radio who says stuff like bull, and, you know, especially if they say several times.
I agree with you.
So the next time somebody does that, I don't care if they're atheist, Christian, or whatever, it's rude.
Yeah.
I agree. You know,
And I would not ask them for their opinions on anything else, but you do have a button there that you can cut them off.
Yeah, we probably should have done that.
Your point is well taken. I was so shocked, I was numb. I should have just pressed the button and said, you've had it. Yeah. And I agree with you on that.
But, hey, we got to let you go. We're less than a minute, so we got to let you go.
Thank you for calling in.
Next time you make a mistake, I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
That may be a lot of calling.
All right, folks, it's time to start wrapping things up. Get out your pen and paper and write down our contact information. This has been a Freethought program, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm John Clark.
And I'm Joe Barnhart. Please send us feedback. We have a leave voice mail at 865-272-9060. That's 272-9060.
Yep.
And email us at freethoughtforum